Coming up, the world below us might be spinning 1,000,000 miles an hour. But today we are slowing down and taking time to understand and fully see those around us. We're talking awareness.
The Whitney Reynolds Show is supported by Children's Learning Place, excellence in early childhood education since 1998. And the Autobarn Mazda of Evanston and Chicago. The Autobarn Mazda, where driving matters. Special thanks to Kevin Kelly with Jameson Sotheby's International Realty, Art of Modern Dentistry, Deluxe Cleaning Services, Josh Moulton Fine Art, Evolve Her, Chicago Andrea Creative, and Mazda.
Welcome to the Whitney Reynolds Show. We're coming to you from the clouds of the 99th floor of the Willis Tower. It is so easy in this life to look down or around and just see a big city or huge world spinning around you. But when you truly zoom in, you'll notice that everyone has a story going on. And that's what we're going to look into today. You're watching The Whitney Reynolds Show. Celebrity chef Judson Todd Allen has cooked up a story that will surprise you. Over the years, he's worked as a chef to Steve Harvey and recently came out with a book that reveals his spice diet. His love for food, though, came at an early age, and he had a full-on food addiction, weighing almost 400 pounds. Looking at him now, you would never know that his greatest love and passion was once almost deadly for him. He joins us now with more. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, I mean, everyone watching probably is looking at you now and say, there's no way that you had a food addiction.
Yeah, this is the real me. But the truth is I had a food addiction. I was addicted to food.
And food is just a passion of yours.
Yep.
And what you do now is like, it's the love of your life.
Yes.
And so how did you develop a food addiction?
So, I tell people that when I was a little kid, I used to dream about food. So I used to have these visions about food. And I knew it wasn't normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I would literally be thinking not only about the flavor of food, but I would see myself eating at night. And it would literally get me up in the middle of the night, and I would go and I would ransack the refrigerator, I'd ransack the cupboards. And it wasn't because I was hungry.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Was it because that you were hungry?
It wasn't that I was hungry. It was just the fact that I just wanted food.
Did you have any type of trauma that kind of left you feeling empty inside and maybe?
So getting back to later in my life, I found out, kind of getting to the root of the issue of why I was dealing with this food addiction, that there were things in my childhood that caused me to turn to food as that coping mechanism.
That's so interesting because so often we all find our different ways to medicate.
Yeah.
And food sounds like that was for you. So when did you get to the point that you knew that you had this addiction? Because for a lot of people, whenever you're in the midst of it, you don't always see it.
Yeah. So it really wasn't until later in my life, really when I got to college, that I knew that this was an addiction. I knew I loved food. I knew that food literally had a stronghold on me. But I wasn't aware of the terminology addiction to food until I graduated and later learned about the fact of, okay, that was an addiction that I had, just like someone can be addicted to drugs or alcohol. But before, food was literally taking a hold on my life.
And you were weighing 400 pounds, almost 400 pounds.
I was close to 400 pounds when I graduated from the University of Illinois. And I saw for the first time myself for who I really was, and that was an overweight, obese individual when I got my graduation photo in the mail. And, it wasn't a little bitty photo. It was this kind of life-size photo of myself. So for the first time, I saw myself at that weight. And I tell people ask me, they say, well, you look in the mirror every day. Well, you don't see an overweight person. But it's interesting because when you're struggling with your weight, or when you're struggling with any part of your body or your image, right? we can control what we see, right? But for the first time, I saw myself, and I remember tears just beginning to flow from my face. And of course, I blamed everybody but myself at that point,
You
right?
naturally do.
That's just natural. But it wasn't until the point that I was able to get to the root of the issue, get to the root of why I turned to food as that coping mechanism. Yeah.
And when you saw yourself for the first time, with that photo, is that when you started doing the hard investigation into life of like, why do I do this?
Yep. That was the moment I said, I'm going to go on a healthier lifestyle journey for myself. And although I was kind of this fun, jovial guy, right?
I can see that.
Deep down inside, I was really struggling. And I would never let anybody know that. I would never let anyone know that.
That's the craziest part with the show today on awareness is, we pass people all day long, and you see people on social media and you have no idea what's going on with them.
You don't know.
People did not know that you were struggling with a food addiction.
They did not know. And they saw me as an overweight guy, but they didn't know how much I was eating. Right? So I tell people that, sometimes it's our stories that we have to go through these things in our lives. For me, it was going through the trauma. It was going through some of the things that I experienced from family members to build not only our story, but later in life, we're able to share our successes in getting through with other people, and we can help them to overcome whatever they're going through.
That's
so
good.
sometimes our struggles and our battles are not for us, it's for others. And I preach about that all the time, and I always give my testimony, but I encourage people along their journeys, right?
I am just floored by you. And I love what you said about you would never truly know, unless you share it. And you are really great at sharing where you've been. And now where you are now is amazing. You have a book, The Spice Diet. So you're really sharing your secret to success. I mean, it's not really a secret anymore.
No, it's definitely a book about my testimony, about my journey, right? It's all about inspiring and encouraging people that are not only struggling with weight, but are struggling with addictions and period, right? People ask me, how did you lose the weight? And I tell them it was by taking spices and flavor to change my perception of what healthy food really is.
And now you're able to have everyone know how you lost the weight, share your journey, and actually give them a tool. So.
And give them this tool. And it's an easy book. It's an easy read. I take all the monotony out of how do I flavor my healthy food, right? Because everybody wants to know. They go through this. They go to the same spices, your salt, your pepper, but I give you a myriad of different things that you can choose from. That really encourages people to say, I can get in my kitchen, I can cook, and I can make this stuff taste good.
I'm gonna read that and apply.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Whitney.
Thank you for being bold with your story and helping others be aware that it's not always what you see right now. So thank you.
I thank you so much.
It's now time for our viewer's voice, and this week's show is all about awareness. And with awareness, you need to take time and ask questions to understand those around you. Let's take a look at this week's viewer's voice. Our question is, are you aware of those around you?
When I have friends or family, or maybe even the cashier at the grocery store is not feeling up to par, I can usually tell there's a problem. I ask them how they are, and if they tell me, I continue to ask them to see if they want to talk about it. If they don't want to talk about it, then I let it go and change the subject. But if they do want to talk about it, I am very sincerely wanting to know. I don't want to, just slough it off. I don't want them to say, I'm fine. I want to be there for them.
I try to be pretty aware for safety reasons and in case anybody's going through anything.
Yeah, I think in my mind, I'd like to think that I'm aware, but there's so many people, it's hard to imagine what anyone's going through at any point in the day.
Because you also want to be in the moment.
Get social with us. Make your voice heard. Submit your video on WhitneyReynolds.com. Always wearing a smile and charismatic personality, our next guest says that was his daughter, Katie. On the outside, she was one that you would think had it all, from her amazing theater performances to beautiful smile. Katie passed away from suicide at the age of 23, and her dad joins us now with more. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You know, we just told your daughter's story, and that's tough. It's a tough story.
Yes, it is.
Today's show is all about awareness. And with awareness, we want people to know that mental health does exist. And when we pass different people, they could be having a high or low day. Your daughter, Katie, was one that came off to everyone else a happy-go-lucky kid.
Right. She was. I mean, she was that kind of kid. She was a great student. She was an athlete. She was, there's parental pride here, so you have to excuse me a little bit, but she was just the kind of kid parents would want. She was the youngest of 6 children and probably slightly spoiled, but she was just a delight as a person.
And she was in theater. She always wore a smile on and off stage. Did you have any signs when she was younger that anything might have been spinning in her head?
No, that's the really interesting but amazing thing about her. If you had asked me about kids that were likely to be suffering from a mental illness, she'd be the last person. She was always up. I said to people when this all happened that I'd never seen her down until she sort of hit the wall as a junior in college. I mean, she was a good athlete. She was the president of her class in a big Catholic high school, a suburban high school. And she just was a great kid. She loved everybody, and she made an effort to love everybody. She just worked hard at it. That was her goal in life. But no, we never suspected it until she was a junior in college. She calls up one day and says, I'm really hurting. She said, I'm thinking of hurting myself. And it was a total shock to my wife and I.
Was it, and you said up until that point, you couldn't even imagine that.
She was always up. I mean, she was not, I never saw her depressed. She was always happy, it seemed like. But now in looking back, bipolar, that could be a sign. And speaking of awareness, we weren't aware of all that's involved in mental illness. I mean, we'd heard manic depressive kinds of things in the past, but just weren't in tune with what even bipolar was.
Right.
At that point, my wife went she was coming from someplace else. She went right to Boulder. I followed the next day, and we got her immediately into counseling in the college, and they couldn't have been better to deal with that. But eventually she was diagnosed as mildly bipolar.
Did people around her at that point realize that we need to kind of circle around Katie?
Sure. I think the college was well prepared for that. The family, not so much because we didn't really have the experience. Right. And it was hard for us to grasp that this was actually bipolar. I remember talking to the psychologist and saying, okay, and he said she had to be on medication. And I said, well, how long will she have to take this? And he said, the rest of her life. Mm. And I said, what? Are you kidding? How could this possibly be? But that, in fact, is the case. If you're bipolar, as much as I'm against over-medicating, you need to follow doctor's directions and stay on your meds. So
she went into this treatment facility, and this is not where the story ends.
Yeah, well, so the school was good. She basically, the recommendation from the therapist was we take some stress off of her at this time. So she actually withdrew from her classes. The school was great about that. They refunded her entire tuition, which
wow.
is, amazing that they would do that. But they recognized that these kinds of problems occur. Our mistake probably, if it's a mistake, is she wanted to stay and work in Boulder over that summer, and we didn't bring her home. And in looking back, there's always something that you'd think you would do differently, but we didn't. So she was basically a semester late completing college. She completed it in 2012 in the second semester, the first semester of 2012, December of 2012. And we went there for her graduation, and we could tell something was very wrong. We'd been hearing reports that she'd been using marijuana, which was completely out of character. And I want to be honest about this because
right.
other people would know. She was arrested for shoplifting twice.
And that was never...
Never. I mean, the kid was all American, everything, you know. It was just completely out of character. And we didn't know about it, you know.
Right.
And when we got there, we saw her room. She had written all over the walls and things. So we brought her home, and we didn't know. We thought maybe this is a substance abuse problem at that point.
You're just trying to troubleshoot.
Right. And it's hard to tease out which it is, whether it's a mental illness and she's self-medicating with marijuana, or whether it's a substance abuse problem that you have some symptoms of mental illness.
Right.
That's the difficulty in these cases now that we know this. So we looked around for programs, and of course she wanted to go to some yoga program in California that would be therapy, but we got her into a substance abuse program at Hazelden, which is in Minnesota, which she didn't take to. And it's not a secure facility. It's basically for a voluntary program for substance abuse. And she walked away from it at one point and got a ride into town and called me up. Tried to get her to complete that. She just, at some point, couldn't do it. She grabbed the knife and threatened herself in the kitchen, and they wrestled her to the ground, and then they took her into the hospital, and they said, we can't handle that. We brought her home on a Friday, and she was telling us, I think God wants me. I'm not afraid to die. We had her at home. We didn't know what to do, but we knew we had to do something at that point. And we got her through the weekend. We just babysat with her the entire weekend, figuring that that's not a good time to go to a facility. Monday morning, we took her to a behavioral health facility, a mental hospital, a mental facility in Hoffman Estates. She was admitted on a Monday, and Thursday she attempted to hang herself in the hospital. She never regained consciousness after that. That was it.
I am so sorry. We wouldn't have you tell that story if we weren't wanting to raise awareness for mental health.
I understand.
And then also, we want our viewers to know that everyone has these highs and lows, and we gotta be aware of the people that are out there.
Right. Absolutely. And that's why we're not afraid to talk about it. In fact, you know, on one hand, we like talking about it. On the other hand, it's certainly bittersweet that it's difficult. But awareness is the key to this, you know, awareness and reducing the stigma of mental illness. You know, everybody has it. It's just so common. I mean, who doesn't have depression, anxiety, and so forth? Now, it isn't always a psychotic disorder, but everyone has something, and they need to be able to ask for help.
Yes, and yes to everything you just said. I always say when we cover mental health, if we bumped our knee, we would go to the doctor and check that out. And same, I mean, highs and lows, get it checked out. Understand that mental health is just as important as our physical health.
Absolutely, and there's good people that are working on that. I mean, you know, Patrick Kennedy is the guy that runs the Kennedy Forum now, and he's Ted Kennedy's son. He fought hard for the Mental Health Parity Act, but his personal story, he suffered from addiction, alcoholism, and he says when you go to the doctor, why doesn't the doctor ask you, he asks you how your blood pressure is, how your cholesterol, how about your sobriety, how about your anxiety, how's your depression doing? You know, that should be part of an overall health program. And that's where we need to get to, you know, and we need to be able to talk about it, you know, people to say, particularly kids.
Yes.
I mean, particularly young people. The incidence of suicide ideation in middle school is astounding, you know.
Well, and talking about it is key. Thank you so much for coming on today and opening up your story in hopes to raise awareness for mental health and just being aware of others that might be going through a similar story.
I'm happy to do it. Thank you.
Author Emily Belden's new novel, Hot Mess, is a romantic comedy about a woman and her struggle through a tough time after her boyfriend took off with her heart and money. Although the book will have you laughing, the tough plotline of heartache is loosely based on Emily's real-life experience. Let's welcome her out with more. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So today we've been talking awareness, and you wrote a book. It is a comedy, so it's going to make people laugh.
Right.
But the woman in the book is loosely based on you.
Yeah, there's definitely some autobiographical elements in there that have worked their way, as every writer would kind of say. They write what they know. And so, yeah, definitely they'll snuck in there for sure.
And that was a rock bottom moment for you, realizing codependency.
Right. Yeah. So the relationship in the book is loosely based off a relationship I had a very long time ago, almost a decade ago now. But those memories and experiences have stuck with me, obviously, through all of these years. But at the time when I was younger, I had come out of a bad relationship, just like we've all been through a million relationships that haven't really worked out. And this relationship was about 2 years, and it ended because I just felt like I wasn't needed. Like, we could have gone either way, but ultimately we broke up. And I hated that feeling of not being needed. And I knew that my next relationship that I went into, I wanted to make sure that I was needed on whatever level.
Mm-hmm. Did you think that was that a healthy thing for that next relationship, or was that?
I mean, in hindsight, that's not a healthy aspect about it at all.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, that is something that within me, I wanted that feeling. And I mean, I wanted it on like a basic level. Like if that person needed me to accompany them to a party, or if that person needed help paying a bill, or if that, whatever that need was, I wanted to be there for that and sort of prove my worth so that I would never come to a point where I wouldn't really be needed anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting because this show, we've covered many different things in the awareness spectrum today. And, the whole thing is like, as a city, everything's big and moving, going, but when you actually pass people, everyone has something going on. And breakups are a reality of life.
Right.
And that's a hard thing, especially whenever you're trying to feel needed. How did you overcome that time?
Well, so, it took a long time, because eventually what happened was I found myself in a relationship with somebody who really needed me. Unfortunately, to your point earlier, that's not a super healthy area to be in, because this person who ended up meeting me had kind of addictive qualities. And anybody who has either been in a relationship with someone who's an addict or has an addict in their family understands loving someone and being present in someone like that's life. It comes with a lot of sort of deception and manipulation, codependency. And so here I am trying to getting to fulfill all these needs of this person. I get to go with them to events, and I get to help them pay their cell phone bill and help them work through, difficult challenges. And I kind of forgot completely about myself. I'm a normal girl. Like, I walk down the street and I have a job and I have places to be and I have a great family and I got good grades in school. But once I got home and behind closed doors, I was sort of dating and in a relationship with somebody who was just draining me from every standpoint. I mean, financially, emotionally, everything that you could kind of suffer sort of that abuse was going on.
When did you become self-aware that you were this person? Because we've hit awareness on a lot of different things, but you had to become self-aware.
Right. So I was kind of blind. I had the blinders on. I had no idea that this is the way that things really were. Like I said, I reasoned away everything. And with this particular person, this went on for almost a year. And then one day, I was never the type to really snoop or spy or anything, but I saw his phone, and in it was a text message, and all it said was, "Hey babe, can you make sure the rent gets paid today?" And that was not to me.
Oh.
And he had not been home a few days of the week. He would be, I have to work late, or I have a big thing coming up. I'm going to be sleeping at a friend's or whatnot. And again, at the time, I'm not processing any of that. I just accept it for face value. But when I saw that text, it was like divine intervention, like a bolt of lightning hit. And I was like, whoa, this person had, so many things I had excused, but how can you excuse someone who has a double life? There's another me. There could be even another, who knows? Wow. And I was like, that moment was when I realized, what are you doing? You are worth so much more than just being one of many that, are supporting this circus.
So it was really that text message,
that
was
moment.
Self-love, self-awareness, all in one. And we're going to see that in this book.
Yeah.
The character kind of goes through a similar situation. Right. Thank you so much, Emily, for coming on.
Absolutely.
If you passed our guest on the street, you would never know the stories that have shaped them and the struggles they have overcome. We hope today's topic on awareness has helped you realize that everyone, I repeat, everyone you encounter has a battle going on that you know nothing about. Let's be aware and let's be kind. For more information on today's show, visit whitneyreynolds.com. Signing off from the clouds. See you next week.
Go beyond the interview with our 52-week guide of inspiration. The book goes deeper with the stories you see right here on The Whitney Reynolds Show. To order your copy for $12.95 plus shipping and handling, go to whitneyreynolds.com/store. The Whitney Reynolds Show is supported by Children's Learning Place, excellence in early childhood education since 1998. And the Autobarn Mazda of Evanston and Chicago. The Autobarn Mazda, where driving matters. Special thanks to Kevin Kelly with Jameson Sotheby's International Realty, Art of Modern Dentistry, Deluxe Cleaning Services, Josh Moulton Fine Art, Evolve Her, Chicago Andrea Creative, and Mazda.